This is the full set review for the Lost Caverns of Ixalan. This is part 3, so go ahead and go back and watch the first two if you get the chance. Really, I'm just covering the other colors and the overview of the set. So very quickly, I'm going to go over the system that we use today. So instead of the traditional letter grade system, which I find outdated and mostly useless, I grade on a scale of 1 to 10. A 1 is a card that you should never play. A 2 is a card that you should do your best not to play. A 3 is filler. You'll have a lot of 3s. Don't worry too much. 4 is a replaceable card. It's something that you're not too upset if you have to play, but it's okay if you end up cutting it. A 5 is a strong card. You will very rarely cut a 5 from your deck. A 6 is a card that you play in that color. A 7 is a card that is worth putting in some work to play, whether that's a splash or changing your curve around a little bit. An 8 is a reason to play the color. You're not going to see too many. 9 is a card that you will always play. Full stop. That means that if you are in that color, if you can make it work, great. But sometimes it's going to be worth splashing. Sometimes it's going to be worth changing pick order for. If you open a Gruff Triplets in pack 2 of Wilds of Eldraine, well, you're green now. And 10 is a card that wins the game. So I also grade with a floor and ceiling system. So the floor is the worst a card will be. It's usually what the card will be vanilla form. If you just have that card with no support or synergy. A ceiling is the best a card will be. And then the effort value is what it takes to bridge that gap. So that is, if it's a sideboard card, if it's situational, it's how unlikely or how difficult it is to make that situation occur. And your goal will always be to raise the value of your cards to get it up as close to a 10 as you can. All right, so we're starting out with green today. And what we're gonna do is do a very quick framing for each. So the green cards in Lost Caverns of Ixalan, green-white is a growth strategy. You are growing your creatures, attacking harder, combat tricks are popular. Blue-green is explore. That means that you have extra uses for mana, but you're also accelerating to an extent and digging through your deck for the cards you need. Green-black is descend. That means you're trying to put permanents into your graveyard. Those creatures grow, and there's some good ones. Red-green is dinosaurs, specifically the creature type dinosaur. There is mostly support for dinosaurs in green. It's a little bit in red, but most of the red dinosaur support is incidental. Like most of the green dinosaur support is you should be dinosaurs or this isn't going to work. Green in Lost Caverns of Ixalan has fantastic combat tricks, really powerful ones, good ways to grow your team. The removal all requires a creature. It's very efficient. There's a lot of it and it's at instant speed, but you have to have a creature in play. Fights and bites. It has the biggest creatures out of all the colors, which is impressive because the creatures in Lost Caverns of Ixalan are just generally larger than in other sets. There's a lot of value in your curve, in just having your cards in play on time, and also in playing ahead of your curve. There are cards that if you get them out a turn early, you're probably going to win the game. And then the individual cards are powerful, but it's not great at drawing more cards. And that, what I mean by that is if you have a deck with a lot of explore, most of the extra cards you draw are going to be lands. The value you get from your mechanics, from your explore, and from your dinosaurs is in higher quality individual cards. So some questions that compare with that is, how do you get to the game stage where you play the best? How do you get to the mid game if that's where you excel? How do you get to the late game if that's where you excel? How do you play your 6/6 on turn 2 if that's where you excel, if you're in the early game stage? When you get to the late game, are you going to be trying to outvalue them with timely tricks or with giant creatures? Yes, giant creatures are card advantage because if you're attacking your opponent with an 8/8 and they're at 8 life, they're going to have to sacrifice a creature every turn. That is how you develop value in green if you don't have a complicated engine. You have a lot of incidental explore. Even if you're not the explore deck, you will be exploring in green. How are you going to turn that explore into more value? It can be with a few high quality cards in the late game that you are digging for, or it can just be by drawing lots of extra lands that you have a good use for. How will you beat the gnomes? And by that, I mean your opponent has the ability to brick wall your game plan if your game plan is attacking with huge creatures, because there are lots of different ways to just make a huge amount of 1/1s or small blockers while they hit you in the air or burn you down. What are you going to do about it? Are you splashing for anything? Green is very good at splashing in this set. Splashing is not a normal part of Lost Caverns of Ixalan compared to like Wilds of Eldraine, But green is really good at. There's a lot of incidental fixing, and there's a lot of fixing you can work for. What are you going to use those colors for? And then how are you fighting? And that means, I don't mean how are you fighting your opponent. I mean, how are you making sure you have creatures in play to fight? Otherwise, you're not going to have enough removal. This is a cool color. It's less, some of the other colors are like a little easier to work with. The power is here in green, but if you're the kind of person who really likes control or really likes turning every card into maximum value, green might not be for you in this set. Because you got to be able to use size and you got to be able to proactively attack. The O3 gnome is very good against this archetype. All right, so up first we have the Armored Kincaller. I gave it a 4 with a floor of 4 and a ceiling of 5. And it's not that hard to work with. A 3-mana and 3/3 is just efficient in this format because when you're attacking, there are so many 2/3s for 2 mana and a fair number of 2/3s for 3 mana. The Armored Kincaller tends to trade favorably with other 3s and 4 drops, gains 3 life in the dinosaur deck, and this is just not a format where a 3-mana 3/3 is bad. There's a lot of little ways that this card gets a little bit better, and the dinosaur deck needs this card. You need a lot of you play this as a 3-mana 3/3 vanilla dinosaur in a lot of decks. You want to try and get the life if you can, because even in this format, you will sometimes need to beat an aggro deck. There's not a ton of aggro decks, but the 3 life is used for being an aggro deck. But if you're up against another mid-range deck, the mid-range decks tend to try to win by either flying over you in the air for small increments of damage on a small stalled board, or draining you out a few points at a time, and that 3 life is still going to matter. This is a set where incidental life gain is not crazy important, but it's strong if it's on a creature that otherwise passes the vanilla. Just a solid bread and butter dinosaur. Up next, we have the Capybara. I really like this card. I'm slightly worried it's eating all of its friends. Like, the Capybaras you find on the level 1 are just normal 1/3s basking. The Capybaras you find lower down are eating all the birds that gather around them. But yeah, what a card. Even like the flavor text is like, yes, we understand the importance and power of this Capybara. You really need to be descending with a Capybara. Descend 4 will kind of just naturally happen eventually. So the question you have to ask yourself with the Capybara is, when do I need the descend to happen for this card to be good? If you're a more controlling mid-range deck, then you can wait until turn 5, 6, 7 to have descend 4 and you'll be happy. If you are a very aggressive deck, then you need to be aggressively descending. So this is a 5 in the black-green deck, a 3 elsewhere. If you are blue-green or black-green, this is a 5. If you are red-green or green-white, then this is a 3. So we gave it a 4 with a floor of 3, ceiling of 5, effort right in the middle. It's a pretty good showcase of this system. All right, up next we have Cavern Stomper. It's wild that a 6-mana 7/7 that scries 2 is just a 3. And that's just because there's better things to be doing. I actually did, this is supposed to be a 4. But yeah, there are better things to be doing. The scry is nice, but it's fragile. It just kind of dies or gets chumped block, even with that activation. So like, this is a dinosaurs card. A 4 in the dinosaur deck or a 5 in the dinosaur deck. If you're ramping into it, great. But like, you can't rely on this to be your late game win con unless you are already playing a whole bunch of other dinosaurs that have been eating the removal. People are going to be overplaying the Capybara because, like, look at it. I want to know what the alternate art... Hang on. We're going to look at the alternate art Capybara if they put it out. We're just going to search type... Alright. Alright. We don't have the alt art yet because we only have the digital version. Alright. I do want to know. Remind me. Send it to me when you get it. Alright, next we have the C-Note Scout. Now, this is going back down to a 3. I don't know. We're going to be revisiting this. It just doesn't feel like this is what you want to be doing with 6 mana, but it's still a 7/7. 7/7 is big. All right. We're definitely revisiting it. All right. C-Note Scout, really straightforward. 1 mana, 1/1 that explores. Like, you play a 1 mana, 1/1 Surveil in this format. Or a 1 mana, 1/1 draw card. There's not alt art for it yet, Thane, but there probably will be once we get the collector boost. Yeah, not much to say about the Scout. Like, this is your bread and butter explore card. 1 mana 1/1 that either is a 1 mana 2/2 with Surveil 1 is good, or 1 mana 1/1 that draws you a card is good. Either way, this is a good card. Man, there's just not that much to say about Explore cards because we already covered why Explore is good. Surveil is good, drawing a card is good. Right. All right, Cody Scavenger. Here's another cool one. I like the 5/5/5, 5/4/6. This is a card you really have to be descending. I should probably raise the difficulty to a high. But like, it's not the best thing to play on turn 3. We're lowering. No, it's fine. But it gets better as the game goes on, and it does loop. So like, if you play this as a 3-mana 3/2, you're not too upset. It doesn't say return target permanent card not named Cody Scavenger from your graveyard to your hand. If you have 2 Cody Scavengers, you're going to be very happy. If you have 2 Cody Scavengers and the black card that raise deads twice, like this is a very strong way to recur and generate unlimited value in your green. Very good. All right, up next, yeah. So 5, floor of 4, ceiling of 6. You want this in multiples. I am assuming descend here. Like by the time you are looping these or that you need this to descend for, I'm assuming you have it. The one caveat with this card is it's like stockpiling Celebrant. Like you play this on turn 3 as a 3/2 if you have no other 3 drops. It's not worth holding till you have the descend just for the extra permanent. Velociraptor, 4 mana 4/5, reach trample, just an efficient dinosaur. A 4 mana 4/5 vanilla would be good in this set. 5 toughness is a lot. But the reach and the trample is relevant. I also love the story of this card. Like, I feel so bad for that guy in the gondola who just got lowered down. I think it's related to the other gondola too, because the other gondola in blue is a 4/4. It's just eating it. Just really good stats, relevant creature type, reach trample. Reach is powerful in this set. All right, Disturbed Slumber. Weird card. I gave it a 3 with a floor of 2 and a ceiling of 3. If you are like, this is bad removal and bad combat trick, but being both is kind of relevant. And being able to, so like saying you have to block on turn 3 will often just eat a 3-drop. And if you are an aggressive deck with good 2-drops, then you can play your 2-drop and then make a 4/4 and they have to block, but it is inherently risky because you don't want to be giving up your land. So when you're winning, it'll win you more. If you're on the play, it's very good. If you're on the draw, it's pretty weak. So I gave it a 3. It's usually going to play like a 3. You don't want to have to play the Disturbed Slumber. Hopefully you have better combat tricks and better removal, but sometimes you'll play it and it'll play just fine. Earthshaker Dreadmaw. It's a 6 mana 6/6 with trample. If this card draws you 4 cards, you will have already won the game. If it draws you 4 cards because you had 4 dinosaurs in play, then you are already going to win that game without the Dreadmaw. There are going to be enough board stalls where you can't attack into your opponent's death touchers with your dinosaurs, where Earthshaker Dreadmaw suddenly makes that feel okay because you draw 4 cards. On average, this is going to be a 6 mana 6/6 draw a card, and that's still great. This is the 6-drop you want in the dinosaur deck, but you play it if you're not in the dinosaur deck, just if you have a few other dinosaurs. Just a solid card all around. 6 mana 6/6 trample that draws you some cards. Yeah, that's exactly right, Tyrant. It's kind of almost a neat trend. Wizards has been like, how much can we push this card before people will play it? And we've seen a few successes, right? Like they finally got Suit Up. Suit Up, target creature becomes a 4/5 draw card. They got people to play Suit Up. And you know, this is almost there. This is really close. I think the next version is gonna be 1 mana. This is 1 mana, I play it. Oh yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah, this card is almost why I think counterspells are good. Oh, and it's gonna feel in green like the ratings are grouped together. It's just coincidental. Like, if you put all the ratings of green cards into a spreadsheet, it's still pretty diverse. But for some reason, I think it's because like all of the Cody cards are solid. Yeah, but they feel grouped. They're not. Explorer's Cache, a very cool card. Colossal Dreadmom is a great name for it. This card's really cool because you can use it the turn it comes down. So chances are this plays like an equipment with a free equip cost. And the ability to throw counters around the whole game is pretty nice. The assumption with the Explorer's Cache, so if this is 2 mana, distribute 2+1/+1 counters on it. I actually meant to lower the floor. Then it's going to be a 4. But green has so much incidental explore that is often going to play more like the Ozolith. And the ability to make your creature to be an artifact that's just in play for crafting, and to grow your creatures selectively at the right time is really nice. Also, it will change a bit. It'll change around how your opponent has to block a little. Cool card. I'm pretty excited to play with it. And yes, I gave it the same rating as the Earthshaker Dreadmaw. I will sometimes take it over Earthshaker Dreadmaw in some decks. The Explore deck and the Dinosaur deck actually don't have a ton of overlap. So just keep that in mind. Are you going to be a Dinosaur deck or an Explore deck? Like, Dreadmaw is good in all decks besides the Dinosaur deck. The Explorer, like, it's not good in just the Dinosaur deck. Explorer's Cache is not good in just the Explorer deck. But you will take one over the other if you are blue-green or red-green. It does only get back 1 counter at a time, Ranger. But that is not terribly relevant in this set because, like, some things will explore and explore again. Some things will explore, like, sometimes you'll put 2 counters on 1 creature with the cache, but, like, the ability to always turn the counter back in is, like, if it you want this to be more than just a piece of equipment, but if it's a piece of equipment that also has incidental growth from other explore cards is nice. It is important to know, Ranger, especially at your pre-release. All right, now next we have Glimpse the Core. It picks up a tapped cave or goes to get a forest tapped. For this card, like, if this were rampant growth, it would be fantastic in this set. As is, it's still solid. The ability to grab a forest out of your deck for the ramp is nice. You're not that interested in skipping your 3-drops. And like, your 3-drops are very good, but I like Glimpse the Core because it also provides late game value. The thing is, I should raise the effort value, I think. I think this card's really good in Constructed, actually. Yes, but picking up a cave from your graveyard is relevant to a lot of decks in the late game. This is kind of a cave payoff, almost more than a ramp spell. But the fact that it can be a ramp spell or a cave spell is solid. The cave deck kind of wants more caves. It's a cool card. I'm not going to be picking it too high just because, like, so if you're an aggressive dinosaur deck, excuse me. Right. So there are good sacrifice effects on the Caves Tyrant. But if you're an aggressive dinosaur deck with Glimpse of the Core, like, you might think, oh, well, I can play my Dreadmaw a turn faster. You don't really want that in this format. You want a good 2-drop and a good 3-drop and then a good 4-drop. You don't want to skip your turn 2 and your turn 3 plays to get a 4-drop faster. Situationally, you might if you have very good 4s or very good rares. But I found that a lot of the power in green is concentrated at 3 and 5. Glowcap Lantern. Really cool card. Great in the Explore deck. Solid. So, like, this is good when you can put it on a flyer because you don't always get to attack. This 1+1/+1 counter does not a full attack make. And if you look at the top card of your library and you see a land, yeah, drawing a card is nice, but not if you have to sacrifice a creature. This card gets better the more flyers and the more evasion you have. If you have it on a huge creature, it's nice, but, like, that's not why you play this. Cool card. Also, there's just some inherent value in 1-mana artifacts. So I really like this in green-white or green-blue, less so in green-black and red. And that's not because you don't value the descent or the growth. It's because you don't care about it being a 1-mana artifact and you don't have time to equip it. Cool card, though. I love that we get to, like, we used to have Explorer's Scope. It reminds me of that. Watley's Final Strike. Solid, middle of the pack removal. You have to have a creature, but most of the green creatures have 2 power already, and you're not too upset about this dealing 3 damage to something. Just add instant speed, it's nice. The Don't mix it up with Clear Shot out of Shadows over Innistrad, because it doesn't get +1/+1. It gives +1/+0. Giving it +1/+1 was much better because it makes it very hard to 2-for-1 this. But you can 1.5-for-1 this. Like you can trade your 2/2 up with a 3/3 and kill another 3/3, which is why it has a ceiling of 5. Because if you set that up right, getting that extra bit of value makes it better. Otherwise, it's just fine removal. Like it's slightly worse than Curse of the Werefox, but it is instant speed. Hey, BJ and Co, how's it going? Did you bring them by, Vocon? How you doing? Good timing. We were just between cards. Thank you. I really appreciate that. I'll give you a shout out when this time's out. So today we are doing our Caverns of Ixalan set review. So we are in the middle of green right now. If you have any questions, raids, comments, whatever, go ahead and ask them, and I will answer them between cards. Green is a pretty cool color here. All right, up next we have the In the Presence of Ages. Oh, I should have said this. I'm Scuffle. I do limited content and I try and keep everything educational. So we are just going over all of the cards and how to fit them into your draft deck. So I really hope that this is helpful to you. Thank you again, Vocon. I appreciate you bringing everybody by. I'm sorry there wasn't a big emote explosion. Usually there is, but I don't do it just for the set reviews. All right, In the Presence of the Ages. Situational 2-for-1. It's kind of weird. If you could always get 2 cards off of this card, you'd be very happy. And you can build your deck to always get 2 cards off of this card. If you can get a creature and a land and trigger a Descend and get halfway to your Descend 4, then this card is great for you. But it has inherently diminishing returns, because if you have 4 of this card, that's 4 instants. And you kind of want... Being an instant or a sorcery in your green deck is premium space. You only have room for so many cards that don't feed into your Descend, and you're usually going to be spending them on instant or sorcery removal spell. If you end up not being the Descend deck, this card gets a lot worse. So, it's kind of awkward to fit into your deck and not a very high priority for picks. But it's still a cool card and I'm glad it exists. I will usually be happy to play 1 copy in my Descend deck, and I'll play more if I don't have a lot of instant sorcery base removal. But yeah, kind of just okay. Not specifically, Hatter. It depends on which specific Planeswalker suite you run. Because some of them, like, if you're heavy on Tezzerets, then this is a set for you. Ixalan's Lorekeeper. So for this card to be good, you need a lot of dinosaurs, and you need a lot of 3-drop dinosaurs. If you have a lot of 3-mana dinosaurs, this card gets fantastic. Otherwise, it's pretty average. But, like, there's a 3-mana 6/6 dinosaur, and there's lots of 3-mana 3/3 dinosaurs. And playing those on turn 2 will just put you so far ahead of people. But it is straight up a dinosaur card. Like, this is only good in red-green, where it's very good. I think that's a very good point, Tyrant. I don't think we'd ever, like, if you will end up playing more than 1 In the Presence of Ages, but it'll usually be because something went wrong, because you didn't get quite enough removal. Secondary. I think you will legitimately build decks in this format, Ranger, that are 24 permanent. I think you can do that because of the flash artifacts that are also a removal spell. Like, there are going to be blue-black decks with 2 instants or 0 instant, and it's all going to be permanents. You'll still be able to do things on your opponent's turn. Jade Seastone. So this is our first green craft card. I think it is the best green craft card. You really need to make sure you're maxed out on 2 and 3 drops, because if this is 4 mana, put 3+1/+1 counters on 1 creature, you're not going to be too happy. But even just having the ability to divide it between 2 creatures, put 2 on 1 creature and 1 on another, is excellent. And then a 7 mana 7/7 that gains you 5 life or 4 life, you're pretty happy with. Solid card. As opposed to the other craft cards in other colors, those cards are very good early game and very good late game. This card is very good mid game and very good late, which is cool and a nice difference. The floor is a 4 and the ceiling is a 7. That ceiling of 7 is if you're gaining a good chunk of life and if you are ramping sufficiently. It just kind of competes for some space with the dinosaur cards, but it's great in the explore deck and it's great in green black descend deck. So medium effort, gave it an average of 6 with a floor of 4 and a ceiling of 7. Is a little bit complicated, Ruby, but I'd love to explain it all to you. In Magic, there are 5 colors, so I sort things by color, and then there's something in Magic called the color pie, which dictates what each color is allowed to do. So a lot of people find that they resonate very specifically with, and green tends to be life and harmony and song and growth, and that leads to a lot of very large creatures. But in each given set, the cards that we look at are specific to what green means in that place. So in this place, it's cards like, it's these treasures relating to growth and dinosaurs. But I'll be happy to tell you more about it later and answer specific questions regarding it a little bit later, Ruby. So this is the special mechanic for this set. This is craft. So these jade seed stones, they're just seeds, right? They are magical seeds. I love the flavor on this card. And having them is powerful. You put counters on a creature, but you can craft it with a creature and turn into this jade heart attendant. You grow them from these seeds. And so like this one card is a little story of somebody turning the seeds they found into this golem. The merfolk fled underground. They brought the life force of the jungle with them. You're welcome. All right, our next craft card. This is our most situational craft card. I'm upset about this card. Like, why did they give green the card that is the most likely to fail? This is the only craft card that can fail. So you look at the top 6 cards, you put a land into play. Okay, so it ramps you from 3 to 5. I guess that's cool, but you can miss. You're not very likely to miss. It's solid with the cave deck, but crafting a cave out of your graveyard is a cost. You want to keep caves in your graveyard. Cards care about the number of caves you have in your graveyard. So exiling the cave from play or from your graveyard is bad for the cave deck. You'll still end up playing it, but you're never going to be happy about it. I don't know why they decided that 3 mana was an appropriate cost to pay for an additional land, or 6 mana was an appropriate cost to pay for a 5/5. But overall, this card is just going to be a little worse than all of its counterparts, and I'm sad about it. Exactly right, Thane. All right, up next is the Malamet Battleglyph. So we have seen cards similar to this in Tail Swipe, and not having the instant on it makes it worse than Tail Swipe. But 1 mana fight is just pretty good, and that's because, so 1 mana fight is better than 2 mana or 3 mana fight, even with all of the extra effects, because it lets you protect your creature and time your creature better. If you have a prize fight or a 2 mana fight spell, you are usually going to have to untap with a creature in play, and this drastically cuts down on the risk that your opponent kills your creature before you bring in the ability to fight with another creature. Solid card. The ability to put the counter on it and then fight is nice, but like this is your bread and butter removal spell in green, and it means that you're a little more likely to win the fight. Your 3/3 versus their 3. I like it. It's kind of cool that it's not an instant. It would be better if it were, obvious. But yeah, I gave it a 5 with a floor of 3 and a ceiling of 6, and it's pretty low effort. You just have to think a little bit about how you're going to play with it, and you have to draft a bigger creature. Malamet Brawler. I like these Malamets. Are they all, I guess it's like a race of cave cats. I really like that. It's pretty good. It's just a pretty generic 2/2. It's so I gave it a 4 with a floor of 3 and a ceiling of 4. Like, it takes a slot from some other things like cats, but or dinosaurs. But green you will often find yourself in green winning the game after a very grindy board stall with one big attack on a giant creature. And like earlier I said, how are you going to get through the gnomes? The Malamet Brawler is an early 2-drop that helps you get through the gnomes in the late game. It gives your 5/5s and 6/6s trample, and there's a few ways to make like a 20/20, and it can give that trample too. So solid without being crazy. It's a 2-drop you're not going to be too upset about playing. It's only a little bit annoying because of how many 2/3s are in the set. It would probably be higher if there weren't, but if you can deal with 2/3s, Like if you have enough cards like Malamet Battleglyphs to just make your brawlers a little bit bigger, or ways to make your brawler explore, you're pretty happy. All right, Malamet Scythe. It's an okay combat trick. It is an artifact, which is relevant best in green white or green blue because of the cards that care about artifacts. But I have a soft spot for flash combat tricks that leave the creature larger. So like just attacking, the fact that your 2/2 attacks into their 2/3 and then you can use Malamet Scythe is solid. But like I just gave it a 3. The floor is a 2. The ceiling is a 4. Medium effort to make it good. But like you will end up playing it a reasonable amount of time. You just don't always want to play it over your other 3. Yes, this is a combat trick aura that with no other text. It just leaves the +2/+2 behind. Like you're not very likely to repay the equip cost till very late in the game. But it's a reasonable combat trick. It's just expensive for a combat trick, right? Like it would be better if it were 2 mana. It would be better if it were 1 mana aura. Yes, but exactly, Tyrant. You can craft it, and this is solid in the white decks that care about the number of artifacts you have, or in the blue decks that care. All right, Malamet Veteran. Card's really awkward. It's just your 5-drop 5/4. There are so many things that block this. There are so many Death Touchers and 5 power creatures for like their 5-drop is likely going to kill this and leave a counter behind. And it's competing with real 5-drops. It's solid in the Descend deck, but like it's not going to be your first. It's not going to be the card you want to be playing in the Descend. It's even annoying. Like it feels like they almost built this to die to certain things, like Cosmium Blast, 4 damage to target attacking creature. Kill this, and that's annoying. It is a cool card. Like it is filler. You're not gonna be. It's usually gonna play at this floor of a 3. I gave it a 3. But in the Descend deck is a little bit better. The cost here isn't in getting your veteran to Descend. The cost here is getting your veteran to attack. So like, you have a deck building cost in playing the Malamet Veteran, which is holding combat tricks and removal spells, and making sure you have enough to get that first attack in. This is a legitimate win condition, because you can just keep attacking with it, and it'll snowball pretty well. But it's work to get the first attacks in, and it's work to keep alive. There are not good free, like there's no snakeskin veil or royal treatment. Keep it protected. Attacks in, but you know you can situationally make this card solid. Mineshaft Spider, finally a good spider, a very good spider. Like this is the crux of: are you a dinosaur deck or are you a Descend deck? You'll have to decide between this, because the 4 mana is where the good dinosaurs tend to be. Like this is a really good Descend card. Reach is valuable, it blocks a lot, but there's dinosaurs with reach. So like you play this card if you're a Descend deck, you pick a dinosaur over it if you aren't. I gave it a 4 with a floor of 3 and a ceiling of 5. But even if you're a dinosaur deck, keep it in your sideboard and side it in best of 3 games, because sometimes you're really gonna need this card. Like a 4 mana 3/4 on its own is good enough, but the reach and the mill 2 essentially make it feel like a 4 mana 4. And you can grow this when you need to. Yeah. I like this one too. Like it's a spider in the mineshaft, and it's got a magic infused web around this chest. Cool card. Nurturing Bristleback. Magic has recognized that baby dinosaurs are 3/3s as well. I guess not a baby. Child dinosaurs are 3/3. This is 7 mana for 8 power on a Forest Cycler. This is 7 mana for 8 power on a card you can get rid of when you need the land for 2 mana. This is 7 mana for a 5/5 in a set where cards in your graveyard matter, and reanimation is a thing, and blinking is a thing. This is just a very good card. Yeah, Hurl into History is really good. It's like so weird. And like it's just a cool like I like the idea that you're countering the spell, and it's like you are gaining knowledge from finding whatever you hurled back. Very cool. Just very efficient. Like, this is the best curve topper in green outside of rares, because it lets you do things early and feeds your descend. And I will usually try and pick up like 2 or 3 of these, just because having land, like, you will have time to cycle. Like, I know that seems extreme, but I love cards with modal cost. That would be cool, Tyrant. Over the Edge. This one I came back to a few times, and I put a lot of thought into. You're usually going to play this as like a 21st, 22nd card. The thing is, against white and blue, this disenchant is very strong. There's a lot of really good white and blue artifacts. And against red and black, whose removal is based on the size of your creatures, exploring and exploring again is really good. Like, this is the modes on this are destroy target artifact, 1, destroy target enchantment, 2, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature, draw a card, 3, surveil 1 twice, put 2 +1/+1 counters on target creature, or draw 2 cards. All of those modes are very, very solid on this, and the existence of all of those modes, it makes this a much better card than you would. Darkstream, thanks so much for the follow. Really appreciate it. I'm Scuffle. We are doing this between cards. I will say hello and thank you. BJ and Co, thank you so much for the follow. I'm sorry we didn't get the emote explosion from your follows. We are doing a I turned them off just, but usually I have them. It's really nice to meet you, and I really appreciate the raid, BJ. It's really sweet of you. Let me know if you have any questions, okay? All right, Pathfinding Axejaw. You'll find that I put most of these Explorer creatures to a very narrow band of ratings. And that's because a 5-mana 4/3 that draws you a card is great, or a 4-mana 4/3 that draws you a card is great. A 4-mana 5/4 that surveils one. It's just a good dinosaur. Like, the 4-mana dinosaurs are very good. The difference this card is just so good. It's really unfortunate because it makes the Mineshaft Spider sad. But solid card, always does what you need it to do, and a good dinosaur all around. Poison Dart Frog. 2-mana 1/1 with reach that gains Death Touch. I know it says 2-mana gain Death Touch, but it's only 1-mana gain Death Touch if it's defensive, because you get to block and tap it for 1 of the 2 mana it takes to gain Death Touch. We talked yesterday a little bit about why Death Touch is so good in this format, and there's nothing to punish this frog. There's a 1 spell we'll talk about later that deals 1 to everything, but like, your opponent is going to have to spend real removal on this, and generally speaking, is going to be a 1-mana. It's going to be an accelerant in a color that really wants accelerants, that also trades with a creature later and does kind of everything you needed to do. Reach is valuable. Trading with your opponent's huge creatures is valuable. This is a very good mana dork. Also, look at it. It's so cute. Look at its eyes. I didn't even notice its chair. What a card. This is so Ruby. This card is so powerful in the set. So I gave it a 5 with a floor of 4 and a ceiling of 6. Medium effort. You're pretty happy skipping to 4 mana with this card. But paying 1 to give it Death Touch is great, and blocking, like, the reach means that your opponent can't go around this. Your opponent will have to spend a real removal spell on this, or attack a real creature into it. That's just not where they want to be. Exactly. So Ranger, it can block and then tap itself to give itself Death Touch. So it's really only 1 mana. And the fact that it's any color is very strong. Like, you would play this if it were a 2-mana 1/1 that made any color and had a reach without the Death Touch bonus. Solid card. River Herald Guide. So this is one of the worst explorers. Like, it is a 3-mana 3/1 or 4/2, and it does draw a card a lot of time. I still gave it a 4. Like, it is one of the worst explorer cards, but I still gave it a 4. And that's because it's very likely to trade down. Very likely that your opponent gets killed with their 1-drop or 2-drop in a set where 1-drops and 2-drops are pretty good. And that's fine. It still is going to do what you want it to do. You're just going to pick it a little lower than the other explorer. Seeker of Sunlight. I like this card because it's a 1-drop with a late game activated ability that is solid. It's a good mana sink for the Explore deck. And green blue wants good access to, I'm going to lower the floor a little bit, wants repeatable access to Explore. The ability to just like sink all your mana into digging for your threats in a board stall is solid, and playing it on 1 mana is solid. And sometimes you're just going to have to pay 3 to trade with your opponent's 2-drop, and that's fine. But if this draws you 1 card, you're happy. So I gave it a 3, floor is 2, ceiling of 5, medium effort, because it's some work, and it has diminishing returns. You can only play so many of this card, but I'm pretty happy with the first or second copy of it if I'm not an active dinosaur deck. The Lunking. This is better with the caves than you'd think, but still not great. Like, it's kind of bad ramp. Gaining 4 life is nice. If you are a really dedicated caves deck, meaning you have like 10 caves that would otherwise come into play tap, then you can gain enough tempo from this to make it playable, but it's still not good. We're going to raise the ceiling because if you are jumping from 3 mana to 5 mana in specifically the cave deck, then it's playable. We're raising the effort as well. Yeah, we're raising the effort in the ceiling because with some work, you can get up to a ceiling of 4. It's just not a card you want to play. Very sad. All right, staggering size. Reasonable combat trick, nothing crazy. There are other preferred ways to break through, but it goes back to that question we asked at the beginning. How are you going to turn your giant creatures into a win condition? Staggering size is a good way to do that. That is not a dead card in the early game. It lets you dodge a braid and other burn spells, and it lets you win a combat. But it's work. So pay attention to how you're using it, and pay attention to how many copies and combat tricks you have. It is a giant, it is a staggeringly sized capybara. Now, so this is a level of chill that all of us should aspire to. All right, up next we have Tendril of the Myco Tyrant. Now, this is a late game mana sink. This is a fantastic card, 2 mana 2/2. If you're the Explore deck or a deck that doesn't have something else to do with 7 mana, pick it up. But like, this is a 2 mana 2/2 that does 2 mana 2/2 things. It trades with things, it grows, it lives its life, and then pays 7 mana to win you the game. So that's a floor of a 4, and the ceiling of a 7, that's because you can build your deck around getting to the point where you're using this mana sink every turn. Just very good. So like, you'll see me repeating a lot. If I'm exploring, how am I using my mana? How am I using the mana? Because you end up with a lot of extra lands when you're exploring. This is how you're using the mana and win you the game. It's some work, like, but it's worth it. Yes, this is you can also just let your opponent attack, and then like, if you have 8 mana in play, your opponent just doesn't attack anymore. And you can use it on their end step if you only have 7 mana. Just a solid card. Like, you'll have situations where, like, if sometimes you're gonna be stuck on 7 mana and your opponent's gonna have a lot of creatures in play so that you can't attack. So what you can do is tap 7 on their end step to make a 7/7, and then leave it back to block. And then on their end step again, tap 7 mana to make another 7/7, and then leave it back to block. You'll have this situation where all 7 of your 7 lands are 7/7. So good. Thrashing Bronodon. This might be best uncommon. One sec. In green. I'm double checking my ratings. Yeah, this is the best green uncommon. You do have to be very green. But like, over the course of this green set review, yes, better than the Dreadmom Tyrant, because this comes down on turn 2 often enough that you're happy, and your opponent can't do anything about it. Every single color has targets for that destroy target artifact or enchantment. It is better than it was in Ixalan. It is better than it was in Magic 2012. Like, the thing is, so many cards in this set ask you to have a dinosaur in play. And this one comes down on turn 2 or turn 3, blocks every other creature at 3 mana, just about, except for the ones with Death Touch, and is just so likely to be a real threat until you have to use it as a disenchant. That floor of a 4, that's if you're not the dinosaur deck or if you don't have a way to use the sack. And we're going to talk about it in 3 cards about why this one of the things that makes this card so powerful. But yes, this is not only a great card, it's always been a great card. This is the best it's ever been. So I have it as my highest rated green common. I think I have one other 7, and that's it. Yes, the destroying stuff is very good. The 3-mana 3/4 is very good. Destroying stuff is very good. Being a dinosaur is very good. It is a reason to go into green if you get one late. That's just very good. All right, twists and turns. Now this is a really cool explore payoff. The scry. It's so many little things that adds up. Like if this is just 1 mana, you do have to have a creature in play. But if this is 1 mana, scry 1, explore, you're pretty happy. And the late game card advantage, the late game grind you get out of this card is very cool. Twists and Turns is also a great name for a magic card. And like it turns into a maze, which is so cool. So I gave it a 5 with a floor of 2. That's if you just don't have enough explore or the ability to get lands out. This is not an aggressive card. This is a mid-range and late game card. Medium effort, floor of 2, ceiling of 7. Cool explore payoff. I'm going to be taking it pretty high just because I'm very excited to play the explore deck, but it's not crazy if you're not the explorer. Walk with the Ancestors. Card's just kind of bad. It's a lot of work to make this more than a 5-mana draw 2 cards. It's very likely that this is going to be 5-mana draw 2 cards most of the time. The Discover 4 is okay, but building your deck so that it hits a 4-mana spell rather than a 2-mana spell reliably is going to be so prohibitively difficult as to not be. If you have bombs and are a Descend deck, if you are good at dumping cards into your graveyard and have things that you want to pick up and have cards that you can discover that are worth it, then you can play it. But like that's a lot of work. So I gave it a 2. It's usually going to play near that floor of a 2. The ceiling is a 4, and it's high effort. All right, that'll do it for green. We're going to take a 2-minute break and go over to red. I'll be right back in a minute. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right, Ranger. And some decks need a 5-mana divination. And it's sad that some decks need a 5-mana divination, but that's what it's going to be on average, and you have to treat it as such. All right, be right back. I'm just getting my water. Okay, so sorry, I'm back. Ooh, Pineco. I missed the one problem with set review is that I missed the rigged Magnemite jumping around when we excuse me. Okay, here we go. So red cards in Caverns of Ixalan are different from red cards in other sets that we've seen. Strixhaven? So like you can be aggressive in red, but you don't have to be. So as a quick overview, blue red in blue red as an archetype that is pirates. Um pirates. Red white is go wide, but not in such a traditional sense. It's not just put out 5/1/1s and put a +1/1 counter on them all. It's put out 5/1/1s and use them. Tap 2/1/1s to do his thing. Tap 4/1/1s to cast a creature. Red green is dinosaurs. We just talked about green. We got into that a little bit. It's very mid-rangey and explosive. Red black is grindy. It's descend to an extent, but you are using the descend cards to grow your creatures over time to generate value. You have to decide when you're playing red, is this speed or is this an engine deck? So as you go, decide whether you're adding things to your speed deck or your engine deck. Compared to like Wilds of Eldraine and every other aggressive set, red is less flexible. There's obviously a few exceptions, but you'll see you'll see higher effort values across a lot of these different colors. And then generally speaking, the 2-drops are very strong. The 2-drops tend to be where that flexibility is. Okay, cool, Tyrant. Let me know when we get there. The questions to ask when you're drafting a red deck is, what is your speed? When are you trying to win the game, and how are you trying to win the game? So like, knowing your speed, knowing whether you're trying to assemble a certain combination of cards or do something specific will change things a lot. What is your engine? And even if you're a fast deck, you can still try to assemble an engine. A really good example is Blue-Red Pirates. You can build that deck very aggressively, but Captain Storm puts a +1/+1 counter on a pirate whenever you play an artifact. So that's a good way to look for what your engine is. What do you need to draw to bring a card up to its ceiling? Like, what cards have to go with it? Are you looking for a ton of artifacts? Are you looking to craft? You need more dinosaurs? And then how will you deal the last points of damage? Like, where are you going to get the win? How are you going to grind this out? And where can you make substitutions? So, like, you're going to have gaps in your removal or in your curve or in your win conditions, and you'll have to find weaker cards to fill those out. Red is very much a find the right piece for each spot kind of color. Up first, we have a real doozy. We're starting with the best red common. So a Braid has always been a powerful Magic card. This is the best a Braid has ever been. So I did the math on what it kills, and so we know from our slides before that it kills 73 damage, kills 76% of all creatures at common or uncommon in the set. However, because of the structure of the set, there are 148 permanents in this set. That's pretty high, because a lot of the instant sorceries have been replaced by permanents. It killed 76% of the creatures in the set. It also killed 76% of all permanents in this. Every permanent in the set is either 76% of all permanents in the set is one of the 50 artifacts in Lost Caverns of Ixalan, or one of the 16, 70, 80 creatures that has 3 toughness or less. So honestly, this is a common. So that Thrashing Brontodon is powerful in part because it survives a Braid. That's just how ubiquitous a Braid will be in this format. People will splash a Braid. A Braid is not something you can count on for your aggro decks. It's just very good in this set. It kills 112 of the 148 permanent cards at common or uncommon in the set. Just very good, very efficient, low effort card. Play all of them if you can get them. Splash for it. And it does this for 2 mana at instant You can do it in response to whatever. You can wait for your opponent to craft, or you can play this and another spell in your main phase. Just we're starting off with the best common. Thank you for starting with the letters and Ancestor's Aid. +2/+0 and first strike, not quite good enough. Not gaining toughness means you can't make it survive, for instance, a break. But it does tend to win the combat, and it makes a treasure. So it's good if you can use the treasure. This is an okay trick. We've seen it be better in the past. The main issue is that instants and sorceries are a liability. But if you can use the artifact, is good. If you can use the artifact at instant speed, is good. And if you have creatures that this lets you win combats they wouldn't otherwise, it's good. Just like a normal combat trick. It's a little bit better if you can get it to jump you to 4 mana on turn 2. That is better if you have a lot of 1-drops and 4-drops, or a lot of 2-drops that you can play this on a 2-drop and play a second 2-drop in the same turn. It is not terrible or unplayable. It is not amazing. It's just a normal combat trick. I gave it a 3, floor of 2, ceiling of 5, high difficulty. It's always going to be fine. It's just tough to get max value out of it. Belligerent Yearling, another doozy. We just so happen to have most of the really good red cards at the beginning. Very strong, efficient 2-drop. Like, we talked a lot about how 3 toughness seems to be the norm on a lot of the creatures. So having 3 power on your 2-drop is great. There's also there's just not enough 2-mana dinosaurs. The dinosaur deck really wants this card, but there's also a lot of cards, a lot of good tricks and ways to grow your creatures at 3. So it slots nicely into the curve. It's best in the dinosaur deck, but it's always going to be pretty good as a 2-mana 3/2 trample. And every once in a while, you'll get to jump the power up to 7 and hit somebody for 5 unexpectedly. Just a very efficient 2-drop in Brazen Blade Master. 3 mana 2/3. I just read the flavor text. The secret is footwork plus an extra sword. So this is a 3 mana 2/3 that will usually attack as a 4/4. It has to attack as a 4/4 to be worth it, and you have to be able to reliably make it attack as a 4/4. But it's not as hard as you'd think, and it's got relevant typing in that it's a pirate. It's a pretty good 3-drop. If you can't reliably have 2 artifacts in play, then ignore this card. But we're going to look at a lot of red cards that make it easier. This is a red-blue or a red-white card. Try to avoid playing it in red-green or red-black. But you will have to sometimes. It's not going to feel like the end of the world, because black can make map tokens and red can make treasures. So you can still make it work. Playing cards like Brazen Blade Master is why you will end up including cards like Ancestor's Aid just for that trick. But do note that it triggers on attack. So you have to have the treasure in before the attack is made. It's for real. It's very true, Troy. They are consistently pretty cute. Even like the dinosaurs are adorable. One day, look at the flavor text. One day will be as terrifying as it thinks it is. Burning Sun Cavalry, very efficient 2-drop. So like, this is a cool card, but you have to take it after you are aggressively taking Belligerent Yearlings and other green 3-drops. It does self-support in red. You don't need other colors for this to be a 2-mana 3/3, but this is not good unless it's a 2-mana 3/3. If it's 2-mana 2/2, it's pretty average. That's a floor of 3. But if you can get up to that ceiling of 5, you're pretty happy. There's very good dinosaurs. And like, you want this to be a Grand Ball Celebrant, not a Wicked Visit. Calamitous Cave-In. Look at that bridge. I gave it a 4 with a floor of 1 and a ceiling of 8. This card is really strong in the cave deck, and I will occasionally first pick it in order to make the cave deck work. This isn't dealing at least 3 damage. It's not worth it. You want to be able to get it to 5 damage, and really, you want to be able to control the damage. And there's a few cool ways you can do that, but like, you want to be able to be like, do I make this 4 damage, or do I play the cave that's in my hand and make it 5? But it's nice that in the cave deck, this scales as the game goes on. So on turn 4, if you have 2 caves in play, it's likely to kill everything as a pyroclasm. On turn 6, if you have 4 caves in play, it's likely to kill everything as or to everything. A very cool card for the cave deck specifically. It also is important enough to the cave deck that I think the cave deck needs regular access to red mana. Exactly. That's exactly right, fools. So This is an important card in the cave deck because so many of your lands come into play tapped. So like, it's similar to Gates Ablaze back in Ravnica, and what you would need to do is time your basic land. So if you have a deck of 9 caves, 9 basic lands, which will happen a lot because you get extra lands in caves decks, then you're going to want to just time your 4th basic to wipe the board on that turn 4. Very cool. Well, it counts caves in your graveyard as well. So like, this is a cool card. So, but we'll talk about that more soon, Tyron. But Tyron brings up the point that a cycle of the caves in each color discovers 4, and you can discover the Calamitous Cave-in. You also do not have to cast this. You can put it into your hand if you don't feel like wiping the board when you hit it. So just cool. Child of the Volcano. I love that you go 4/4/4 with totally different, 3 different difficulties, 3 different floors. But they do all average out to be 4. So this card is solid compared to the black one with Menace. So this has more going for it than the black version of this card. There's a black 3 mana 2/2 with Menace at the beginning of your end step. If you descend it, put a +1/+1 counter on it. There's a few things. So first off, this is more likely to be a 4 mana 4/4 with Trample than the other one was likely to be a 3 mana 3/3 Menace, because you are more likely to attack creatures into their creatures on turn 4, or have things on board that you can sack or that your opponent needs to kill on turn 4. And once this is a 4/4, you're happy with the cost. We're gonna raise the floor to a 3. So the other difference is that the black one, let's say you are in a situation with an extreme board stall where you're just maybe milling a card each turn or having a normal combat each turn, this growing will kill your opponent through 2/1/1s. The Menace creature will not. So if you can grow that, if you are in a true board stall, the Menace one can be chump blocked, and this one cannot, even though it takes 2 creatures to chump block the other. The card we are talking about is this one, Deep Goblin Skull Taker. I like it more. It's just less effort, but it's got a very similar score. See, it's a little bit better at 4 mana, but it has the same issue of the other things that you want to. So like, if you're the dinosaur deck, you're not going to be able to take this card because all of your most important dinosaurs are at 4 mana. And if you're the pirate deck, you might have a copy of this card, but like, you need to be dealing with what your opponent has so you can attack in with your 2 and 3 drop. But this is part of that black-red or red-green non-dinosaurs will happen sometimes. But usually black-red or red-white go wide or grind the deck. I like it. It's also just the child of the volcano. Thank you, Volcano. Curator's Sun's Creation. If you have enough Discover in your deck, this card is really good. If you don't, it's not. So I think that the best comparison for this card is the Chancellor of Tales from Wilds of Eldraine. The difference is that Chancellor had there were cards that you didn't want to duplicate with the Chancellor of Tales from Wilds of Eldraine. You want to duplicate every Discover ability with the Curator. If this is a 4 mana 3/3 that does nothing, it's bad. If this is a 4 mana 3/3 that draws a card, it's really good. If this is a 4 mana 3/3 that draws 3 cards, you're gonna win the game. And so the easiest way to think about this is your Discover cards can draw a card. The nice thing about the Curator is there are ways to discover the same turn, because there are things that discover on death, and there are things that, like, when they attack, they'll discover. The problem with the Curator is those cards cost 4 mana. Most of the other good Discover cards also cost 4 mana, so you have to untap with it. So, like, it's a lot of work to get value out of the Curator. A lot of work. But it's still pretty good. I want this. What? What is PPR? All right, Daring Discovery. Are just bad. Like, 4 mana to make 3 creatures not able to block and draw a card. Like, you can cast in the same turn. If you really work at it and have enough cheap spells that also kill a creature, or build your deck so that most of the creatures at 4 or 3 mana or less have haste, it's playable. Or if you have a lot of the Curator Sun's creation is playable, but you're not happy when you have to play this card. You will sometimes, like your deck will be, there are decks that are going to be aggressive enough that their only 5 drops can be 2 Daring Discoveries. But yeah, you're not going to be happy about it. Oh. What? I didn't see the pre-release. I forgot that they still did that. Good night, Ruby. Thanks for stopping by. Diamond Pickaxe. What a card. The Minecraft staple is here. This card is very good. Indestructible artifacts are relevant. A 1-mana artifact equipment is solid. Making the treasure right away on attack is very good, especially because it's hard to deal with. Making treasure every turn is very good. And there is a card that says 3 mana. Enchanted Artifact is a 5/4. Like, you can make an indestructible 5/4 with this card on turn 3. Very good. This is a very good card. This is a really powerful piece of equipment. And like your opponent has to use a removal spell on the creature. They can't kill the pickaxe to shrink your creature. Like, the indestructible is relevant here. Yeah. There's just a lot to like about this card. Making all of your creatures generate value and be relevant for the rest of the game is... yeah, so I will be first picking the pickaxe because of how, like, blue-red artifacts is going to be really good. Like, the number of times people will lose to having a 5/4. And the thing is, like, if even killing the pickaxe with, like, a -5/-5, you still get to draw a card off of the aura. Very cool. I'm going to be playing with this a lot. The ceiling is pretty high. I should raise the effort on getting to the ceiling. Because, like, you need to have some ramp. You want, like, in order to get to the ceiling of a 7, you need cheap creatures. You need 2-mana creatures and 1-mana creatures to go with the pickaxe. You need to use the artifacts. You need to use the ramp that the treasure makes. But, like, we've seen Beamtown Beatstick. We've seen Gold Vein Pickaxe. Making a treasure every turn is very powerful. And +1/+1 is relevant. I like this card a lot. There is a lot. So, good Exile Tyrant is one good O-Ring in a specific deck, one good Exile, but only for an attacking creature, so you can play around it. One -5/-5, so like it makes the tricks a little bit stronger, and one 5-mana Exile. Dinotomaton. I love the flavor text, like Sahili would love it. It's usually just going to play well. It's a 4-mana dinosaur. It has menace, 4-mana 4/3. Solid, 4-mana 4/3 that gives something menace is solid. Like your 4-drop enabling your 3-drop to attack is pretty good. This is the 4-drop you're looking for in the artifact decks or the dinosaur decks. I like it a lot. There is a liability to creatures that are artifacts and cost 4 or more mana, and we are going to put a revisit on this as a result. But you're like, this is already trading with a Thrashing Bronze, so, and is already trading with an Emperor. It doesn't matter that it's an artifact for the purposes of... All right, Dowsing Device. This is a cool card. So, like, this is a red... What you want with a Dowsing Device is for the creatures that come into play to be artifact creatures. But, like, that happens a lot. Like, there's 3-mana 2/2s with flying that make a map token. There's 3-mana 3/3 artifact creatures. There's 4-mana 4/3 Dinotomatons that come down on turn 4, give themselves haste, and enable a complete and total attack. But you're also fine just like using your pickaxe to play 1 mana and grow a creature. This is... It's not really part of a specific archetypical deck as much as its own miniature package. You really want to try and get this flipped, but it flips really fast late in the game. So like, it's very likely that on turn 5 or 6 you get to cast this and it will immediately flip because it triggers itself. If you have 4 artifacts when you cast the Dowsing Device, it turns into a land, which then pumps a creature a lot. Like, this is a good way to break through, a good way to take advantage of an engine, and a good way to win the game if you don't have an engine already. Like, it's good in aggro. I like this one a lot. Yes. It does die to a Braid, but if you suspect your opponent has an Abrade, you can play it and flip it right away and just use the Grotto. I'm actually gonna raise. I might raise the effort, but for now I'm just raising the ceiling. Yeah, I like that. It's work, but it's worth it. And like that average of 4, that's fine. It's usually gonna play at that, and that's pretty good. Red Maw's Ire. I love the art on this card. Like look at this guy. Kind of a rough time. But very good. Really powerful artifact removal. Like 1 mana +2/+2 and trample is worth a card. That is a card you play. We saw Monstrous Rage really overperform the last set. I think pretty often Tyrant. Like the cave deck, we'll talk about caves in a second. All right, so Dreadma's Ire, very powerful, likely to be relevant, likely to be a 2-for-1. Like so often will you attack your 3/3 into their 4/4, trample over for 1 point and destroy their card, but also just being a 1 mana combat trick is what red wants to have anyway. So this does a little bit of everything. One of the best tricks we've seen in a long time. So the cave being relevant is going to be often Tyrant, but I think what we're going to see with the cave deck is caves will lean either harder into lands, the caves themselves, or harder into artifacts. And they're both good, but you're going to want to lean one way or the other. We'll talk about it soon. Yep, that's where we're at, foos. That is really like it's not better than a braid, but it's close. The reason it's not better than a braid is because you have to have an attacking creature to get full value out of it. And yes, that is not very much, but it is something. It matters. It's just a really good trick. I'm glad they're pushing combat tricks. I want to see combat tricks pushed because I like attacking. Enterprising Skywag, a very good 2-drop. It's not likely to make a treasure on turn 2, but it is on turn 3. It is on turn 5. Just a 2-mana 2/2 that with the potential to generate value every turn. Better with specific cards that generate the ability to make descent. I gave it a 5. Floor is a 4. It's very good, and the ceiling is a 7. It's a good Goblin Pirate. I wonder if this is constructed playable. If you build a pirate deck with the Enterprising Skywag, let me know. Making a treasure every turn. Pretty good. Holly's Favor. I love this card. It's really cool. It's like just okay, but note that this can discover itself. I don't know if we've ever had a card that could cascade into itself. So this is a 3-mana 3-mana spell with Discover 3. Like if you can play 20 of this card, you'd probably play 20 of this card in a Grape Shot. Because the thing about Atali's Favor, if you have a 2-drop, it's great. And if you don't have a 2-drop, it's not. But in red, in this set, the 2-drops are really very strong. So like, if you play like a Scallywag and then you get Atali's Favor, like look at some of the other 2-drops that we can cascade into. We've got Belligerent Yearling, we've got Burning Sun Cavalry, and we've got Dowsing Device. Like we have good things that we can discover, including more Atali's Favor. So like the question with Atali's Favor is not going to be how many you want to run. It's going to be, can I run Atali's Favor? So I'd say I'm willing to run 1 Atali's Favor for every 3 2-drops I have. Yes, and there are really good 2-drops in this set. So if you have enough good 2s and 3s, Atali's Favor is very good. And you want to make sure that you're hitting like creatures or removal, things you really want to deal with, and you can't cast this into untapped mana. So like the difficulty in Atali's Favor is going to be partially in your deck building, partially in your gameplay, and you're going to have to play pretty carefully with it. But Trample is a valuable keyword in this set. The ability to push through for damage is a valuable keyword in this set. And even just, it's not a good way to sacrifice enchantment. So like, it is bonus. So if you've got good rares and good 3s, then go ahead and play it. But like you need to pay it, like you're not gonna first pick this. You need to already have good 2s and 3s for Atali's Favor. If you have a few, start taking it really aggressively. Like there will be cool decks that curve out at 3 and just use Atali's Favor. Like you could do that and then you'd want like 1 2-drop hit at the end. It's too bad that there's the actual zero payoffs for enchantment. Like there is nothing that says +1/+1 for each enchantment you can. There's no auras or anything. Like if there were just like one enchantress that drew a card whenever enchantment came into play, I would be so happy. Have something sweet. One sec. A little bit of sugar goes a long way if you are talking a lot. That's true. If you craft any card, like just a Tali's favor into a Tali's favor into a Tali's favor into Grape Shot would be so. Huh? I wonder if there's a Storm deck that gets Tali's favor. It's pretty cool. All right, Geological Appraiser. Just a great card. A 4-mana 3/2 that draws a card, that's something you'd play. But a 4-mana 3/2 that casts a card is very good. Like this is Bloodbraid Elf without haste. It is mono red, and I don't really know why it's an Artificer, but like, card's just very strong. There's not actually that much to say about it. Like, there's a few cards that are like, they work really well to Discover. There's a lot of cards that want you to have multiple cards. But like, if you're red, you're probably playing with this. We will revisit this one just because it has to compete with a lot of very strong 4-drops. So the rating will come down if this actually doesn't have room in the dinosaur deck or actually doesn't have room in the pirate deck, then it'll come down. And it's a little awkward with some of the other counter spells, but overall, card's just fine. Oh, one cool thing that I noticed about the counter spells yesterday is that like the 4-mana counter spell that costs 2 less, you're not going to accidentally discover that, which is just cool. I do think it's playable in formats past standard. Like having access to another playset of Bloodbraid Elves is pretty cool. All right, Goblin Tomb Raider. It's good in the pirate deck. It's bad elsewhere. You have to be pretty aggressive to make it good. But a 1-mana 2/2 with haste is good. You just have to make sure that cards are flowing enough. So if you have a deck with like it's better in pirates, not because it's a pirate, but because in blue-red, you're going to be drawing a lot of extra cards, and you need cheap things that are also actual threats. It's not like a fantastic card in general, but you can be aggressive enough to be very good. I think you're probably right, Tyrant. Popper really needed a Goblin Guide. Okay, so this is the other card. So for those of you who don't know how I do things, I don't listen to set reviews until after I finish this. This is the other card where I have the biggest difference between other content creators. So this one and Pirate Hat are the ones where all the other content creators seem to be in agreement but me. I think this card is amazing. I think this card is a legitimately strong way to close a game in most red decks. So like ideally you want to be an artifact deck, but like blue red white, and red green want this card because what red green does is tap all their creatures. It's like Exalted. So like in a board stall, this will break it open. It turns all of your 1/1s into threats that attack and your opponent has to block and trade with. You can also tap out to make it huge to get that last big kill in, the big swing. I think it's a really good finisher for most red decks, and I think red is not going to be as aggressive as the other content creators. I gave it a 6 with a floor of 4 and a ceiling of 7, and it's medium effort. You have to plan a bit. But like in the worst case scenario where you play this to an empty board while you're behind, yeah, it doesn't block your opponent's 5/5, but it blocks their 4/4 is okay. It blocks their 3/3 is okay. It being an artifact is a liability for a braid, but it's also a boon for the red, white, and red blue deck. Like they want to be playing artifacts. So like you can also, yes, it's a 5-mana 3/5, but the turn you play it, you're so likely to have an extra artifact lying around that you can tap it and that artifact the turn it comes in to grow another creature and spread out that 2 power. Like the number of attacks this card enables, very high. There's going to be so many 2-for-1s that you can play leading up to this that maybe your opponent does kill it, but you have been playing cards that they've been killing for a while, and I don't think people are going to be playing enough removal to make this easy. So I like this card. I'm going to, so the thing that I'm going to be doing, oh, by the way, tomorrow is early access. I'm going to be playing this card in Pirate Hat a little higher in order to test my theories out. So if you want to see me prove, if you want to see my proof of concept, we'll work on it tomorrow. Hotfoot Gnome. Cool card. This is actually also a revisit. This is a super weird one because the 3-mana 3/1 with haste is pretty good. And one toughness isn't a liability as an enabler, but it is as an attacker. Very likely your opponent has a 1 toughness creature to play with it. However, there's a lot of creatures in this set that get a lot of extra value out of attacking, out of having haste. So this is the only way, besides the Dowsing Dagger, to give something haste. This is the only way that you can have in play already to give your 4-drop red-white card haste. So the fact that this gives other things haste and has haste itself as an aggressive creature makes it solid. But it might come down to a 3. The card that is very likely to come down. I have to play with it. This is another card with the I like it though. I think it does a good job of enabling the attacks that follow it. The only danger is that they just block it the turn you play it, but there's not a lot of ways to punish it for having 1 toughness short of block. So we'll usually at least trade. This card just needs to be better. Like 3 mana for an artifact, so deal 2 damage for 3 mana is not good enough. This set. However, enough cards care about artifacts coming into play that it's not useless. Like it's fine in a pirate deck if you care about artifacts coming into play. It's fine in red-white if you need a certain number of artifacts. It's nice with there's the 2 mana 4/4 that you have to tap for and tap artifacts. It's nice in that kind of deck. But that equipment is just kind of gravy, but it's not like a great meal. I gave it a 3, medium effort. Floor of 2, ceiling of 5. If you can get it up to a 5, it's fine. But it's not the removal you want to play. It's like in March the Machine, there was deal 2 damage, incubate 1. It's a lot like that. It's not something you're happy to play, but you'll have to play it sometimes. And with some work, you can get value out of every piece by that ceiling. Idle View King's pretty cool, but it's so close. It really feels like they wanted this card to be good, and if the equip was 0, it would be good. If the craft was less, it would be good. If the casting cost was less, it would be good. If the casting cost was 1 less and the craft cost was 2 more, but all the other craft cards turn into creatures. Why doesn't this one turn into a creature or land? It turns into a +2/+no equipment. So I'm mad because this card is really cool and almost good. Panic Allosaur. Card's pretty cool because a 4/5 with reach is big, it's hard to kill, it blocks most things, and the fact that it can sit there and block everything and just shock your opponent every turn until they die is very powerful. It's a good card. It would be higher, but 5s are a contested slot. There are good 5-drops in red and green. There are good ways to stall the game out, but you won't be too upset if this is in condition. In the engine versions of red, the ones that grind value and play all the removal spells, this card is even better. But it's just a brick wall for a lot of decks. It sits there and blocks everything while slowly whittling them down. There's not quite enough incidental life gain to make it a problem. All right, Plundering Pirate. 3 mana 3/2 that makes a treasure. Yes, 4/5s are really good in this. Yep. Plundering Pirate is just very good. Creatures that make a treasure for free, there's no cost to making a treasure. You don't have to attack. You don't have to trigger Descend. It just is a 3/2 that makes a treasure. Very likely to trade up and leave a treasure behind. It doesn't block that well, but it attacks really well, and it has relevant typing. Pirate that makes an artifact. I give it a 5 with a floor of 4, ceiling of 6. That's low effort. But it's just not hard to get it up to that ceiling if you have a 5-drop that you want to cheat in, if you want to splash a little something, or if you want to take advantage of it being a pirate. So always a good card in red, always a good 3-drop in red. Even if you're a dinosaur deck, you're pretty happy curving into a dinosaur with this. This is a premier red common at 3 mana. Pirates feels really good base red. Like blue as the cantrip pirates. Like there's so many blue cards that are like 2 mana, 2/1. Look at the top 4. If there's a pirate there, put it into your hand. And then these 3 mana pirates that just enable splashing and enable value. You get enough pirates together, I think it'll work. All right, up next, Rampaging Ceratops. I compared it to the Altasaur. It's another 4-drop, 5-drop. It's essentially a 5-mana 5/4 that is just very hard to block. Like I put the compare note in it so that I could put these two together. Because like they're just worth putting side by side. This one blocks really well and grinds your opponent down. It is part of the engine build of red. This one attacks really well. If you can give it haste, make it a little bigger, it's going to kill 3 creatures, become essentially unblockable. Just inverted stats. This is part of the attacking version of red. So like you want to pay attention to which one you are, because you will have this decision to make. You will have to decide between the Altasaur and the Ceratops in a pack multiple times, fairly often. And it changes your deck. Like they have the exact same score. I gave them both 4s with a floor of 3 and a ceiling of 5. And you won't be upset if you end up running the Ceratops in the grindier version. You won't be upset if you end up running the Altasaur in the more aggressive version. But like those marginal percentages are going to add up a lot in this set. I gotta put the slides back. All right, next, Rumbling Rockslide. This is essentially 4 mana, kill a creature. If it doesn't kill a creature, you are probably losing anyway. Your opponent can grow things out of the Rockslide. It is one of the reasons that like this is a good Caves card. This one feels better to play with. This is a reprint from Ikoria. And 4 mana deal 4 or 5 on turn 5 or 6 on turn 6. As long as you have lands flowing, it's not premier removal. Like 4 mana kill a creature is good without being amazing. So you'll end up taking a lot in red. Be prepared to splash this card. Rolling deck. Like if you're a blue-white control deck that didn't pick up enough removal and you have a few of the lands that we're about to look at, don't be afraid to pick up some Rumbling Rockslides for a late game kill spell or a late in the draft kill spell. The ability to clear a important creature is nice. There are also, I didn't see any rares, but like there are cards like Imodane where it's like, well, when you deal damage to a creature, deal that much damage to your opponent. I want to see them. That'll be fun. All right. The Healy's Lattice. So this is one of the first cards I saw in the set. It's one of my favorite cards in the set. 2 mana to discard a card and draw 2 cards. Triggers Ascend, feeds Ascend. Like you would play a regular Tormenting Voice because of how many things care about putting permanents into the graveyard. Your discarding becomes valuable. This is Tormenting Voice on a permanent, so you get to discard a card without giving up a permanent slot for the purposes of Ascend, and it turns into a dinosaur. So even if you're turning this into a 1/4, it's still playable. You want a few dinosaurs on this because you want to try and get at least a few points of power. But this card is valuable in every archetype. This is why I gave it a low effort rating, because I gave it a 5 with a floor of 3 and a ceiling of 5, and I'm assuming that you will pretty much always use the discard to filter your draws and turn it into a creature later. But if you are blue-red artifacts or red-white permanents, or red-green dinosaurs, or red-black grind, you will still play the Healy's Lattice. So it will almost always play where you want it at that 5. It's cool. It's just a cool card. Design's fantastic. I love these cards that are like a singular card of telling a story. So like, this is Saheeli. She has this lattice. She's really good at making these lattices that she already has and then turning them into other things. And she's like really into Huatli, and she's like, I'm gonna learn more about what Huatli likes. And then I'm gonna go study the corpses of dinosaurs. Maybe I'll study some of the living dinosaurs over here. And I like these claws and these talons and teeth, eyes, and these horns. Let's make a 5/4 dinosaur. Huatli will love this. I think it's so cute and a really cool story of a card. Sideclaw Raptor. Not too much to say. Really powerful, We talked a lot about how important 3-mana dinosaurs are. Like a 3-mana 4/3 would be good enough. A 3-mana 4/3 that says, hey, you can't counter my spells, or play combat tricks, or deal damage to an attacking creature anymore. Just really good. It does die to a Braid, still very efficient, and a powerful dinosaur or aggressor makes it really whatever you're doing. I gave it a 6, floor of 5, ceiling is 7. Effort is pretty low. That ceiling of 7 is just there are times when you will side this in to your green blue deck, to your green white deck, just because that ability becomes so valuable. Yes, do make sure to play it pre-combat. That's a very good note, Fot. If you play this before you attack, it will help a lot. Yep. Seismic Monstrosaur. Pretty good card. A 6-mana 6/5 dinosaur is solid. Mountain Cycling is very good. And sacrificing land to draw a card is very good. The existence of this card lets you run more lands in red. It lets you run, 17 lands in your aggressive deck, or 18 lands in general. Eating lands is really powerful. This is a great... All the land cyclers are really good in this. They're very powerful, and all worth playing. One is no exception. It may end up being a 6. The only reason that it's a little lower is that the dinosaur deck has more cards to contend with. Like, it has competition compared to the white one. The white one doesn't have competition. That flying slot. But yes, the Seismic Monstrosaur is very good for a land cycler. Sunfire Torch. This card is so cool. All right, so this is one of the 2 shocks in the set. The reason I like this one so much is you can play this. So first of all, it's an artifact that sticks around. You hold it. It is 1 red mana, and then it is a permanent in play, which blue cares about, and blue-red cares about, and red-white care about. It's good in red-white and red-blue because it's an artifact that stays in play. Good in general because it is a proactive removal spell. You get to pay the cost of dealing 2 damage to a target before they play the target. No, that's not always better than shock, but it often is. It's the Seal of Fire versus shock debate. You can also trigger Descend when you attack. So when you attack, you sacrifice a torch. It triggers Descend on whatever other permanents you have that care about it. Very good in black. It's also good in red-black because Sunfire Torch doesn't actually deal any damage. It's the creature that deals the damage, which means that if your creature has Death Touch, which a lot of black and black-red creatures do, it flat out kills whatever you throw it at. And it also gains life if it has lifelink, but that's just kind of incidental. This card is pretty good. It just has diminishing returns. You are limited on how many copies of this card you can play, but pretty happy in any artifact deck. I just talked myself up on this. We are raising the ceiling and the rating. Because all of the being good in every archetypical deck in a color pair, the 5. Very powerful red card. Gunshot Militia. Pretty fillery card. Like, it's a 2-mana 1/3. It blocks pretty well. If it were instant speed, if you could just tap some creatures every turn on your opponent's end step, it would be great. At sorcery speed, it's a reasonable way to break through a stalemate or a board stall. And it is part of that engine we've been. So, like, there is an engine deck with Sunshot Militia that is solid. You can have little things like tap 2 Sunfire Torches to ping your opponent back. But overall, this is going to play like a 2-mana 1/3. And that is good enough a lot of the time. But it doesn't have relevant typing. So it is part of the red-white deck mostly. And it's going to be pretty good red-white. But everywhere else, it's just fine. It's going great, Ears. Thanks for stopping by. We're almost done. Actually, we're going to talk about artifacts and caves yet, which is going to give another last overview of the set if you want to stick around for a few. I haven't seen the Red God yet, Fought. I really want to. Tectonic Hazard. Solid sideboard card. There's like a gnome deck you'll bring it in against. There's a few 1 toughness creatures in black and white. Not usually worth main decking unless there's a rare that does something with it, recurs. But the overall doesn't really do enough. It just doesn't kill enough creatures. Actually lowering the floor to a 1. If you can kill 2 creatures with it, you're happy. If you can clear some gnomes with it, you're happy. But that mostly makes it a sideboard card. Oh, that's pretty good, Fought. Yeah, that's fair. Like, I love it when there's bad commons that go with specific rares, because then you can, like, it is better for a bad common to go with a rare than a great common to go with a rare. And get the bad common. Triumphant Chomp. Not too much to say. Very efficient removal. You want to try and get it up to 3 damage if you can, which means you need a few dinosaurs. But it's not hard to have a few dinosaurs in red. It's hard to have a lot of dinosaurs. But you should assume that this deals 3 damage most of the time. That floor of a 3, that's if it's only going to deal 2 damage. We don't have a lot to say about Triumphant Chomp. Healing is 5 because it's usually going to deal 3 damage. If you get up to 4 damage, it's still a 5. It's still just a good card. Generally speaking, take it pretty high in red. Don't worry too much about getting a ton of dinosaurs to go with it. Volatile Wanderglyph. Great 2-drop in red. It's an artifact. You don't have to attack to do the rummage, although you will most often attack to do the rummage. But you can crew. You can use it for any of these, like... You can get a pretty cool 2-mana deck going with cards like the Sunshot Militia. Just tap your guy to rummage. You can make cool synergies happen out of bad common. The sign of a deep, long-lasting set. Or one of them. I gave it a 4. Floor is 3, ceiling of 5. Medium effort. Don't worry too much about it. Like, it's a 2-drop. You'll be happy to play. Zoyo's Justice. I want to be wrong about this card. I really do. It's just such... I love it. You spin a roulette. Like, you are rolling the dice when you pass this card. You can hit your opponent's 8-drop, and maybe you'll have wasted a card, and it'll turn into the same card. That's the funniest thing about this card, is you shuffle your opponent's card in, and it can turn into the same card. Maybe you'll get a deck that mills yourself out, and then you use it as a blink. Just a really funny card. I want it to be good. It's not. Like... Oblation is not a playable card in this format. Chaos Warp is not a playable card in this format. This is a 2-mana Chaos Warp. And it's pretty cool that you can go for it. But, yeah, it's just not something you should play. But please play it anyway and tell me I'm wrong. I really want this card to be good. You can do that, Mega, and I love that. I love that you can... If they try and destroy your 8-drop and you're like, I'm going to shuffle it in, and we're going to try again to hit that 8-drop. I love that. However, I really think that this is a bad idea. I shouldn't do this, but I'm gonna be trying it at least once with where'd it go? Here we go. The Curator. I will try and build this with the Curator. I should not, but I want to so very badly. So very bad. Like, the problem with Discover inherently, Discover 10 is not better than Discover 4. It should be, and intuitively it feels like it should be. But it's not going to be, because both of them stop discovering when you hit a 1-mana spell. So, like, Discover 3 is good enough. Discover 2 is usually good enough. Because your deck is most likely to have the most 2 and 3 drops. Discovering 4 is essentially useless. Because your deck is going to most likely have a lot of 2 and 3 drops. Like, if you can't manipulate the Discover with this. You don't get to scry or explore to try and hit a stronger Discover target, but like, because you shuffle. But I still want to spin the wheels on this and try it. Like, I just love the idea of turning your opponent's threat into a random different threat. Like, it could be a lot worse. You could turn it into a Llanowar Elves, but it could also be the exact same thing, and you are just down a card for no reason at all. You can't mana value 1 or greater. It's written into the card, Tyrant. I'm mad about it. You cannot shuffle a 0-mana spell in with Zoyo's Justice. This would actually be a playable card if you could hit a token with it. I would play this if I could hit a token. Not being able to hit a token is just so annoying. Oh, man, that's fine. That's fair. Like, being able to discover your 1-drop means that you can play spells that cost 2 mana, which that's pretty cool. Like, if you have enough Birds of Paradise and Llanowar Elves, the ability to play the Justice on your 1-drop to hit your mana spells is cool. I like that. All right, so that's going to do it for red. We're going to move on to... Oh, wrong one. We're gonna move on to artifacts and lands. So I usually do artifacts and lands first. But I felt that the nature of this set means that because it's an artifact set with a prominent land sub theme, I thought it would help to talk about them last. So I'm going to sit here for a minute, like 4 yogurt color covered raisins, then we'll get on this. I don't usually like eating. Helps keep my throat from wearing out. Talk for 2.5 hours straight. This one is a cool design tyrant. All right. So, Buried Treasure. I love the feel of this card. I'm actually raising the ceiling. So this card in a vacuum on its own. Hang on one sec. You okay, Pop? What's wrong? What happened? My dog has died. But it seems like it helps if I just pay attention to him. He does it, so. All right. So, yes, a 2 mana sacrifice for a mana is bad. But this does a few things. It does a bad job of ramping you. It does a bad job of fixing mana. It does a bad job of being something that you mill and then get to draw a card off in the late game. And it does a bad job of having the keyword mechanic discover on the card. And it does a bad job of being an artifact. That's 5 things that it does poorly. So, yes, this is a bad card, but if you can get it to do 3 to 5 of those things, it's playable, it's still not good, and sometimes you're going to need some of those things. Sometimes you're going to need to be able to rummage this away and discover. Sometimes you're going to need one more source of discover. Sometimes you're going to need bad fixing in a really late game control deck. So don't dismiss it out of hand. I gave it a 2 with a floor of 1 and a ceiling of 5 is a lot of work. Something has gone wrong if you are playing this card, but having access to this card in order to make up for something that has gone wrong is nice to know. It is a cool design. Up next, Careening Minecart. This card is just really good. A 3 mana 3/3 that doesn't die to sorcery speed removal, that makes a treasure every turn is good in this form. Making a treasure every turn is powerful. I gave it a 6, floor of 5, ceiling of 6 is going to play near that ceiling of 6. It is not hard to get a 2 drop down to crew it or a 4 drop down to crew it, and making a treasure on each, like, it will usually trade with a creature, leave a treasure behind. Happy with. But yeah, 3 mana 3/3 vehicle is cool. I like this because it's efficient without being overpowered. Most decks want it. Cool card. Cartographer's Companion. Solid. Like, we see a lot of versions of this 3 mana 3/2 artifact. Like, it's filler. You will play it when you are short on 3s or when you need a little bit of extra fixing. Like, you can think of it like a 3 mana 3/2 scry one. We see that effect a lot. Like, you never want to be playing your Chrome Cats, but sometimes you play your Chrome Cats and it's not the end of the world. And being able to put it different, the counter somewhere else is nice. Solid card, nothing incredible. The Explorer is just good in this format, and making 2 artifacts with 1 card is... Alright, up next we have the Compass Gnome. What a cool card. Very efficient fixing. You don't need, like, this is better for caves. The reason that this card is better than versions in the past, like Dune Mover or whatever, is because of Explore. You can play the Compass Gnome in order to make sure that the card you explore goes into your hand. So it's less of a problem that this goes on top of your library than it has been in the past, because of Explore specifically. That ceiling of a 6 is in the Explore deck or in the Cave deck, or in decks where you it's good in the Explore deck, it's good in the Cave deck, it's good in the decks where you need fixing. And it's never something that you're like really excited about, but you will find yourself needing it quite often. Yes, it's really good with Explore. Yeah, that's true. There's some solid caves that you can grab. A contested game ball. Okay. What a fantastic design on a really cool card that is just pretty bad. So this card does generate card advantage. Problem is that you need to be able to protect it and use the card advantage without giving up attacks, without taking any damage. And if you do take damage, you need to make sure you can get it back. Yes. So the game they play in Road to El Dorado is based on a real ancient Mayan game. So is this one. It is bad, Tyrant, but it's not unplayable. Don't give up hope. You just need to create a control deck or a mid-range deck that can use this card advantage. Like 10 mana to draw. It's 12 mana to draw 10 cards. They really did, and it's so cool. Like, people will play this card for the fun. People will play this card for the fun factor. And if you want to play with this card, here's how you do it. First of all, don't play with this card. Second of all, if you really want to try and make it work, you need to make sure you have a critical mass of cheap defensive creatures. You need to make sure that you have a certain number of creatures with reach and flying in order to block. You need to make sure that your cheap flyers that block can also take the ball back. So, like, if you draw 4 cards with this and your opponent only draws 1 card with it, it's still bad. You need to get all 5 cards for it to be playable. Hey Domino, how's it going? All right, Dig Site Conservator. This card is really powerful in this set. This exiling 4 cards from a single graveyard is very good in this set. Turning off someone's Descend is very good in this set. The ability to draw a card when this perishes is very good in this set. You should take this pretty high, which is ridiculous because like it's marginal graveyard hate. But you may notice that we haven't had any yet. This is the first piece of graveyard hate we have had in the whole set out of all the commons and uncommons. In a set with a lot of graveyard interactions. So like there's no graveyard hate in red, green, blue, black, or white. All graveyard hate is colorless, which means that if you want to deal with what your opponent is doing in the graveyard, you should probably take this. There's not a good way to punish the fact that it only has 1 toughness, which makes it just a good creature that will early game be a 2-mana spell, late game turn off Descend and your opponent's ability to recur key creatures and draw a card. Very good. Disruptor Wanderglyph, also good for the same reasons as the previous one because it exiles, but it doesn't do it as consistently. However, a 3/4 is almost a good enough body. You'll play it for its contested, so you won't play it too often, but like current hate matters. You will find yourself signing it in quite often. You'll take it reasonably highly because the ability to side it in will matter a lot against. But the attack with it isn't free. I may end up coming down on this. I'm giving it a revisit. I'm giving it a revisit. So I actually went and did these first, and then went and did the rest of the set. But then I realized that we should do these last. Look at them last. But the 4-drop slot is very contested. Really good creatures. There's a Mindfu here. All right, up next we have Hoverstone Pilgrim. This is another card that I seem to be way higher on than other content creators. I think it's very good. So a 5-mana creature is like normally not great, but if your opponent is killing this even within a braid, it does take their whole turn. They don't get to kill this for free and deploy another spell, the ward. It blocks very well. It blocks nearly all the creatures in flying, and the ability to tuck cards is really relevant. You will even have, so all of the cards that mill yourself say May on them, and you will often stop milling yourself because there's a real chance you deck yourself. Well, this is a reason to mill yourself out. The games will go long enough in a stalled game that putting the cards back into your own graveyard is actually relevant, into your own library is actually relevant. Keep drawing relevant cards, And putting your opponent's cards back into their library is relevant. Craft is a cost, so you can't respond to what they are trying to craft by tucking the cards in their graveyard. But you can aggressively tuck the cards that they are trying to craft with. Like, Graveyard Hate is difficult enough to come by in this set that you are willing to play an average body, make it happen. Also, this blocks like everything. Like, you don't want it in any kind of aggressive deck, but if you're mid-range or control, you're pretty happy to play the pill. Hunter's Blowgun. Cool card. There's just all of the cards in this set that want, all of the colors in this set that want equipment have better versions of this card in their color pair. But one's good. Like, it's playable. The Death Touch or Reach is nice, and there's a lot of things that combo with Death Touch. Being able to give something Death Touch and throw the torch at it is pretty nice. Enabling attacks is pretty nice, but like, it's just a little expensive. However, like, the white deck wants 1-mana artifacts, the blue deck wants 1-mana artifacts, and black wants red wants to give their creatures Death Touch. It's playable. I don't think there's any first striker. The only reason, so this card plus like the Hunter's Torch is a nice little combo, but there's not a lot of first strike. There's actually, hang on, let's check. Oracle. Curse. There's one card with double strike. So Ancestor's Aid grants first strike. Rare mythic. Its Quinth does not have first strike, but it has the word first because it's firstborn. Alright, but there are cards with double strike. No creatures have first strike. One creature has double strike. That's wild. That's not something I counted. I was doing. Alright, next we've got Runaway Boulder. I like this card a lot. It's the only card with cycling in the set, which is wild. Right, there's no pingers in the set, Beard Broken, but there is one torch that you can sacrifice. So like, not unplayable. Boulder's cool because, so this is a descend card. Because the ability to cycle this to trigger your descend is really good. Without being able to cycle this to trigger your descend, 6-mana deal 6 is not quite good enough. But it's nice having access to some emergency removal in any given color. So pretty cool. I also like that we have a Runaway Boulder. Like, we have the Runaway Boulder card. We had like Stone Idol Trap before, but it wasn't the same. Cool card. I'm glad that it's in the set. Don't play it if you don't have to, but you'll find yourself having to play it. And I like it a lot in Descend decks. The decks that care about triggering Descend every turn. Because drawing a card, triggering Descend is a reasonable plan B. Way bolder. Scampering Surveyor. Card's just good. You want to be... It's best in the Caves deck. It's better if you are like ramping up to 5. But it's usually going to play at that floor of a 5. It's closer to ceiling of 7 in the Cave deck. Or if you're ramping to 6 mana. It's specifically good in the Cave deck because of how good the 6 drops are. But yeah, it's a 4-mana 3/2 that will get a land or a cave, which is relevant, and trade with something. I like it. It's also an artifact, which is relevant. Sorcerer's Spyglass. Cards like this are always going to be directly related to how many cards they turn off, and it does not turn off many cards. However, I will side it in. I'm raising the ceiling. I will side it in against a few decks, like turning off certain caves, turning off the flip side of some of the craft cards. Turning off enough craft cards with this makes it solid, specifically in white, blue, and red, which care about just having an artifact in play. Yeah, but I think it makes sense as an uncommon Troy. I like it. Sunbird Standard and Sunbird Effigy. Cool fixing in a set that doesn't need that much fixing. It's hard. I actually think this is a Caves card because Caves are essentially going to be a 5-color deck anyway. If you can make this a 3/3 reliably, like, you don't really want to pay 5 mana. It is only craft 4 because it can tap itself, and then it flips. But like, it is hard to get full value out of this, but you'll get full value out of this a amount of time often enough, and I think it's a really cool card in general. Raising the ceiling of this one. Like, It's tough to splash enough cards for this card to be good, but I think there's a 5-color deck. I think there's a I think there are 2 different 5-color decks. I think there is a 5-color control deck and a 5-color cave deck. Card is good enough in both of those as a mana rock threat. Swashbuckler's Whip. Cool card, late game mana sink. Not something you want to play too often, but tapping creatures is nice and very flavorful. 8 mana Discover 10 is cool. I like it in green-based artifact deck, because you'll be discovering a lot, or exploring a lot, so you'll be able to get to that 8 mana Discover, and tapping a creature for mana is fine in those decks, but having a 1 mana artifact deck in those decks is actively important. It is really cool, Tyron. Like, whatever else it is cool. So it's some work to get going, but like, I think you just want a critical mass of 1 mana artifacts in the white-blue artifact decks, and this is a 1 mana artifact. Fine. All right, we're on to the lands. So, weird thing happened with the lands. First, I went through and gave all of the hidden lands a rating. Then I went back and gave them another rating because of the how different they are in different colors based on what those colors want to do. Then I moved them over to their respective colors, gave them a rating, and then I put them back together and realized that after accounting for what those colors wanted to do and how they interact with the cards, they all had the same. So here's the thing about these 5 caves. I coincidentally gave them the rating. So coincidentally, they all had the same rating. And that is because red gets the most out of this cave. You need red mana for your caves deck. Green, I lowered the rating on this because green has 1-drops and 2-drops that they actively want to play, but they also have the most lands. They're going to be exploring the most and using Discover the most. White has the most scry, so you have the most control over what you discover, and you discover something relevant. Yeah, I don't like being like, I try to get these right because I have the time to look at these and not everybody does. Like, but these cards are good in this set because you need extra lands. They turn the cards you explore into real cards. They let you trigger I can't remember the name, Descend on demand on your turn. And so if we look at how these have played before, let's look at like March of the Machine, not March of the Machine. All Will Be One. And before All Will Be One, we had Streets of New Capenna. The problem with those cards is you had to decide between sacrificing these and casting a spell. But getting to Discover 4 is significantly better than drawing a card. Like, I compare it to drawing a card, but when it's on your land that takes 6 mana, being able to play that spell is very good. So the ceiling on all of these is caves. If you first pick that cave card that deals damage to the number of caves you have, take these really aggressively. These let you run 20 lands in a deck. That's why the caves deck is going to be good, because you can play 20 lands, lots of explore, and get max value out of everything. You want probably 2 copies of in any given deck, even the more aggressive one. And it goes up the more controlling you are, the slower you are. So Domino, there's very good cave payoffs. There's really good reasons to be cave. And you can't miss your land drops, and you need to make sure you have some untapped lands and enough caves. But you can do it because of the sheer amount of card advantage that comes from playing 20 lands. So Explore means that like your 1 mana 1/1 says it's a 1 mana 1/1 draw a card as long as you have a critical mass of land. These cards that you get to play extra lands because they turn into real cards. No matter how many lands are in your deck, these will turn into a real card. And we're going to talk about a few more reasons. But I think the cave deck will be playing 20 lands quite happily, as long as 11 of them are caves. Captivating Cave. I like this one a lot. Filtering is not great, but getting 2+1/+1 counters out of your land when your deck is 20 lands is great. I like this card a lot as long as you have enough creatures. It's probably coming down a point because like you really do want this to index that care about caves. But it's very good in those decks. The thing is, in the cave deck, this is one of the cards that lets you make 3 bats with 1 card, and it's one of the cards that you are happiest to recur with the 2 mana. Put a cave from your graveyard back into play. Cavernous Maw, truly a caves only card. Like, you need 4 caves, including this one, for this card to be good, and then you have a living land. This is one of the reasons you can play 20 lands. Exactly, that's exactly right, Beard. That's why Brave the Wilds is so good in Wilds of Eldraine. You can play 20 lands if 2 of them are Cavernous Maws, and 5 of them are these hidden caves. But like, you'll have games where you make Cavernous Maw 3/3, put 2 counters on with a captivating cave. Now you're attacking with a 5/5 that is immune to Abrade and most instant speed removal in the set. I think the Caves deck is real. I think the Caves deck is not only real but quite strong. And part of that, so like, we've seen this style of deck before, and the problem we've run into is like, look, these cards are great, they're caves. Every deck wants these. Every white deck wants to play Hidden Courtyard, every blue deck wants to play Hidden Cataract, but not every deck wants a Captivating Cave. Only the Caves deck wants the Cavernous Maw. This is the pack 1 pick 1 score of 3. But like, you're not going to be playing this too often. In a perfect world, you can get 4 Hidden Nurseries, a Captivating Cave, a Cavernous Maw, and just be a mono green cave. That's not going to happen very often. Forgotten Monument. Card's fine. I didn't realize it said other caves you control until just now. I thought that this could pay 1 life to add a mana of any color, and or I thought it was pay 1 in 1 life. So I just misread this card completely. We are going to go ahead and raise the effort to medium and drop the score down, or drop the score down to 2. Yeah, just misread that card. That was one of the 2 cards I needed to change. But yes, this is not a great cave. It's just fine. Only the Caves deck wants this, but the Caves deck really wants this. And the Caves deck wants this, and to go 5 colors. Yeah, well, I thought it was add 1, pay 1, add 1. I just in my head combined it with Captivating Cave. And I realized that right before the stream started. Forgot to change it. All right. So card's fine. It's purely a cave for the sake of being a cave. You're not happy when you play this, but like, you do need to get a critical mass of caves. And it's nice that only the cave deck wants it. The cave deck is the only deck that wants this card. It means even though it's bad, you need some caves in the cave deck, because you'll have this card, this card in the same pack, and you need to be able to take the Hidden Nursery and table the Forgotten Monument. Pit of Offerings. Now this is a cave that is always good. Exiling 3 cards from your opponent's graveyard on your land is good in this set. It's just very powerful. Setting your opponent's Descend back 3 turns with your land is good. It is worth this coming into play tapped. This is one of the caves that you'll have to take. Table one of these caves. Cool card though. I really like it a lot. Definitely going to see playing Commander. Good in general. Promising Vein. This card is incredibly powerful in this set. Like, it doesn't come into play tap, so it doesn't have the setback that a lot of these have. And we've seen cards like this with like the Dragon Temple or Shire Terrace. What's the one that has basic lands? But this also triggers Descend on a land at instant speed for free and fixes your mana. This is a very good card. All the decks want this. If you're a cave deck, you're gonna have to take it pretty aggressively. Like, not all the decks want this. All of the black decks want this, and most of the Descend decks want this. Being able to trigger Descend on a land is just good in general. Thank you, Ash Baron's time. All right, last card of the night is Volatile Fault. This is another bad cave. I don't know what the rare lands look like. There are good. This does answer a few important cards. It answers like. Nope, not this one. Some of the craft cards flip into lands that you have to deal with or you'll lose. So having access to that on a colorless land is nice. However, it's rare enough that it's not worth main decking unless you are the cave deck. But if your opponent has some of the, I know they exist. I haven't seen them, but there's definitely a few rare land cards that flip into rare lands that are just busted that you want this card for. I know the gods flip. If your opponent has a god, side this in. If this is cheaty, but not so much that people will be mad about it. If someone at your pre-release says, "Oh my god, I got a god pre-release foil," you might want to bring in the volatile. And yes, this is a great constructed card. But like the Caves deck does just play this, which is okay. That is all of the commons and uncommons. We are done. We have addressed every common and uncommon in the set. We've talked about it all and all the colors. There is one card that I want to change. So I misread three cards in a major way. One of them was the white card. We already addressed that. I thought the Hawk was a 1/1. Where'd it go? All right, we talked about this one already. But I'm doing 3 corrections. Mine is Bidewing. It's when it dies, it explores, not when it comes into play. That was my mistake. We just talked about the land, and then the last one is Kutzel. So it turns out that the Kutzel that I read the first time was a mistranslation. And then when I pulled it into the slide, it was the correct one. So I thought this said, whenever one or more creatures you control, each with power greater than its toughness, deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. It's power equal. It's just greater than its base power. That was a mistranslation, and I just remembered it and didn't reread it. So this card is better and easier to use than I thought. So I was mistaken, and we have fixed it. But this card is quite good. All right. That is going to be it for the set review. Tomorrow, we're going to put this one up. Tomorrow at 11 a.m. is early access. So I will be drafting this set for at least 5 hours. Probably a lot more than that, but at least 5 hours to start. And then I'll take a break probably for lunch, take the pup out, the drill. And then I will be back and we will draft some more. And I will be drafting to 5 wins or 2 losses with the best drafters in the world, many of the best players in the world. And if it goes to quick draft, I'll probably switch over to sealed. But it's going to be a really good exploration of this set. We're going to learn everything we can and figure out what works and what's not. I'm going to test some theories and we're going to archetypes. It's going to be a really good time, and I hope all of you can make it. It's a long stream. You don't have to be there the whole time. But come in, ask questions. We'll get this set figured out. The rares are going to be a surprise to me. I have not seen the rares yet. I've seen a few of them and spoilers, but I like being surprised too. So that's my surprise in this set. I go through every common and uncommon, learn the format, figure out how it's going to play. Then I look at the rares. Don't stress about it, Tyrant. If you make it, great. But I don't like it when people... So I will see all of you tomorrow for a very long stream with a few breaks. And it's going to be a good time. Friday, we will continue with the rares and mythic rares. And if I can do them all on Friday, I will. But otherwise, we will go ahead and do them on Saturday. For now, let's see who's on. I'm glad that Magic